Hello guys, so today I just wanted to make a quick video spitting some random tips, some random advice that are more focused towards beginners. Because, I've also been a beginner myself and I know what it's like to struggle with painting and art in general. And especially painting, I feel like it has been something very intimidating for me for probably my first year of making art. So, I just want to give you some insight so it's no longer this intimidating, mysterious thing that you don't know how to approach that just feels scary. All right, so the first tip that I want to give you, one of the main things that I feel you should really focus on improving and learning is your ability to create form. Is your ability to create form using value. And what I want you to do is just give this a little bit more emphasis, because learning this is what's going to make your paintings look 3D. So I used to have this problem a lot that my paintings would look very flat. My paintings will lack, that depth, will look very unrealistic when I try to use actual paint. And this happened because I had the wrong mindset about painting. So you want to have a more sculptor approach kind of thing, where you want to focus on sculpting the planes. You almost want to feel like you're peeling a potato in some way, or that you are like sculpting with clay or something. You want to feel like you are 3D rendering like a video game character or something. I know these analogies are kind of weird, but this is what helped me truly internalize this concept of creating form and being able to, kind of 3D sculpt, if you will. And so this leads me to my second point, which is that value and proportions in particular are the most important things that you can learn when it comes to painting. So if you had to learn only two things, or if you had to give your focus to only two things, it should be value and proportions. Because the thing is, when your values are good and your proportions are good, you can get away with a lot of things going wrong. You can get away with a lot of bad color decisions or messing up the rest of the paintings. It really doesn't matter. As long as you focus on these two things, the rest, the whole painting is just going to look good. Now, the third thing that you should learn how to do is blending. You should know how to blend properly and how to follow the form of whatever you're painting with your brush strokes. And this is particularly important when it comes to rendering and, adding more details when you want to do some, when you want to create depth. Come on. So the first tip that I tell you about creating depth, it will require that you use some bit of blending to create like the smooth transitions that will allow the depth to happen in the first place. So blending in particular and making value transitions can be a little bit tricky. I made a video here if you want to watch it. And here I explain in depth and I break down my blending process here. So you can watch it if you want. So tip number 4 is to do thumbnails. So if you feel like painting is too intimidating or you just want to make it easier, something that you can do that you probably saw me doing here on this painting is starting with a thumbnail, or just doing a little thumbnail, painting smaller on the canvas. So instead of painting super big, you are just going to paint really tiny. So it doesn't matter if you're painting from imagination or if you're doing a study. I have been doing thumbnails for a while, and I can tell you from experience that it is such a cheat code. It is actually a very overpowered exercise, and I really never see people doing thumbnails like for photo studying and stuff. And I feel like for painting in general, doing thumbnails is actually really easy. So sometimes it can be actually too easy, at least for me. At this point, painting thumbnails feels so easy that I kind of stopped doing it a lot because it is already in my comfort zone. So, I have been trying to get out of my comfort zone and start doing things that are a little bit more challenging so I don't get bored. But, the moral of the whole thing, the whole story, the whole exercise, the whole point of this exercise is that it's really easy, and that, there's no point on you not doing the thumbnails here. So it's just painting very small, basically. And then if you want to render it, you do it like the same way that I did here. You just make it bigger, and there you have your painting, basically. That will be like your sketch. And the good thing about this exercise is that it doesn't really take that long. It shouldn't take you longer than 15 minutes, because what you're actually doing is focusing on the big shapes of value. And this is a particularly good training, because you're training your brain, you're forcing your brain to see the values and the big shapes without getting carried away in too much detail. And so the idea is not for you to add detail, but instead to keep things very rough and very minimal. So again, you're looking at this from very far away, so there's only so much detail that you can add into this. So go do this exercise and let me know in the comments if this made it easier for you to paint. Tip number 5 is knowing where your art style comes from. So I see a lot of beginner artists always worrying about their art style, trying to get their own art style and, just overthinking about it apparently, which I really don't understand a lot, because I don't really see the point on worrying about your art style when you haven't really mastered the rest of the fundamentals. So I just wanted to say that, your art style really comes from studying other artists and looking at a lot of art. You really have to consume a lot of art content. This might be something a little bit controversial, but I feel like you are being an irresponsible artist if you're not looking at other people's work. You shouldn't have this mindset of, okay, I'm just going to do my own stuff. I'm going to develop my own art style. I'm always going to paint from imagination or draw from imagination and not study anything or anyone. And you should really avoid this mentality, especially when you're a beginner. You really want to focus on doing a lot of studies, studying from artists. And when I say study from artists, yes, I do mean just copying some artists that you like, doing a lot of photo studies and, just getting a feel for all of those fundamentals, especially the stuff that we covered here previously. Tip number 6 is painting and drawing from imagination. So I'm going to cover this two kind of separately. So some people have been asking me about painting from imagination, how all the concepts that I explain in my videos would apply to this. And it is actually a little bit different, because when it comes to painting from imagination, you first need to do a lot of photo studies. This is the main thing, of course. It really depends on what type of style you're aiming for. So if you want to paint hyperrealism from imagination, that is going to require some knowledge. Or if you're going to even paint some more cartoony stuff, like it really depends what you're going to paint. But you also have to do a lot of studies beforehand. This is why I focus like the content of my channel more on doing studies, because I understand that if there's a beginner or even an intermediate artist who's struggling with painting in general, with doing studies, it's going to be really complicated to, just come up with stuff from imagination if you haven't mastered specifically things like creating form and being able to sculpt the form, which in this case would be the planes of the face if you're painting faces, or just being to create depth using value. That is basically all you need to be able to create form like that. Are you able to paint a sphere from imagination, a 3D sphere? Because your ability to paint a sphere from imagination, even though it sounds very simple, like a very simple exercise, that will determine the rest. That will determine whether you'll be able to come up with some other stuff. And you also need to know a lot about the anatomy of what you're painting. And in order for that to happen, you need to do a lot of photo studies beforehand. So the requirements for that will be doing at least, 300 photo studies or 400, whatever the high number is. So I wouldn't really suggest you worry about that stuff right now. Drawing from imagination, in my opinion, is even way harder, because it's a lot harder to conceal your mistakes when you're drawing with lines, because everything has to be more literal. So you have less room for abstraction, I guess. But you need to know a lot about 3D space, perspective, and mostly the anatomy of the object. So I'm currently working on some videos dedicated to this, but just keep in mind that this is way more demanding. This is way more complicated if you haven't already mastered the other fundamentals. Okay, so tip number 7 and the last tip of this video is to optimize your art for enjoyment. So if you're a beginner, I don't want you to make the same mistake that I did, which was basically doing a bunch of stuff that I didn't really want to do, that I didn't really feel like studying, just because I thought that was like the correct way of doing it. You know, studying some fundamentals or studying some stuff that, you know, it's not really that enjoyable, but it's like, all right, yeah, I should do this. It's like when you're learning to play an instrument, it's like, yeah, all right, I need to learn like music theory and stuff. You don't really need to learn these things. And I'm telling you something. I'm telling you to neglect some fundamentals, or I'm telling you to neglect some other random exercises or practices, and to optimize your art journey to have as much fun as you can, because this is the only thing that's gonna make you not quit, that's gonna make you consistent, is to have fun. Even if your art is not really fundamentally correct, or if you are building a lot of bad habits, it is really important that you remain passionate for art. Because look, you can be a very skilled artist, you can have a lot of skill, you can be very talented, and you can still have no passion. And this is the weird part. You can be technically good, you can be fundamentally skilled, but you can find the process utterly boring and excruciating because you're not having fun, because you didn't optimize for having fun. And honestly, this is what's gonna make you slack off in your art. So optimize for having fun. Do whatever you want, really. Just try to find a way to get addicted to art and you'll be fine. Now, if you're a beginner and you like my art, you like the way that I explain things, I made a full protocol for painting where I explain things in this bro scientist type of way, you know, in this like brain dead kind of way. Because it's just the way that I learned it. It's just the way that I like explaining things in a way that's simple, that is not, you know, ridiculously hard for a beginner to understand the fundamentals. And I just break it down in a way that, you know, stops being intimidating and it's way more digestible for, you know, someone like you. So if you want to level up your painting skills, go check the link. It's in the first link in the description. You can watch it there. So this was it for the video, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.